Hey everyone, welcome to the show. So hopefully you guys will all remember this story and this man because a MAGA sympathetic judge is trying his damnedest to let this violent criminal walk free. So here's the deal. A while back, I had shared with all of you, there's a 33-year-old man. His name is Robert Paul Rundo. He had been extradited back to the United States to face charges for violently attacking people, violently attacking counter protesters at several different rallies. He also attacked police. So this all happened in California. And Rundo was found to be the founder of a white supremacist militant group that's ironically named the Rise Above Movement. Yeah, as if they're rising above anything. And Rundo was recruiting other people. He was training them specifically to commit acts of violence at rallies. So Rundo and three other men were charged related to all of these attacks in California. Robert Bowman, Tyler Laub, I think is how you pronounce his name, and Aaron Eason. And four members of the group were also indicted for different people for their involvement and in a conspiracy. They were indicted on conspiracy to riot charges related to that alt-right Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, where Heather Heyer was murdered. Those guys were also a member of his group. So Rundo was dragged back to California to face these charges. He was hit with conspiracy to violate the Anti-Riot Act and one count of rioting. Well, this MAGA sympathizing judge named Cormac Carney has now tried twice to dismiss the charges against Rundo. In 2019, Judge Carney tried to toss these charges against this vile neo-Nazi because he said that the Anti-Riot Act infringed on their free speech rights. So Carney's ruling was subsequently overturned. An appeals court stepped in, said, yes, we agree that some of it intrudes on First Amendment rights, but there are other things in that act that do not apply to free speech, and he was clearly in violation of those parts of the act. However, by the time the appeals panel made their decision, Rundo had already fled the country. He used a fake ID. He made his way down to Mexico. He traveled through multiple different countries before he ended up in Romania. So eventually, as I mentioned earlier, he was extradited back to the US to face these charges. Well, this judge just tried to give him another pass. Last week, Judge Carney came up with a new excuse to let this guy out. The judge used the right wing's favorite boogeyman. If you guessed Antifa, you guessed right. He said the U.S. Attorney's Office is using selective prosecution to target, quote, far-right white supremacist nationalists, but not Antifa or other extremist far-left groups. So Carney wrote in his ruling that the government refused to prosecute left-wing extremists who, quote, went to the same protests and rallies and engaged in the same violent acts as alleged against the defendant in this case. And then he added, quote, by many accounts, Antifa and related far-left groups engaged in worse conduct and, in fact, instigated much of the violence that broke out at these otherwise constitutionally protected rallies to silence the protected speech of supporters of President Trump. Yeah. Do you think this judge watches Fear News Network? I mean, that ruling, his opinion could have been written by Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham. It is that ridiculous. And it is full of just outright lies, outright fabrications. That is not true that left-wing groups instigated most of the violence, and there is documentation to back that up. There's also videos that the friggin' Proud Boys put out showing how they instigated a lot of these things. That is dripping with MAGA talking points and all of the lies and the justifications used by the right. So the prosecutor filed an emergency appeal, and because this jackass judge ordered the release of Rundo, the appeals court took it up right away. So in the prosecutor's filing, they noted that unlike others who participated in violence at rallies, Rundo and his group, quote, routinely bragged about their violent conduct in public and online, and trained together, traveled together, and conducted vicious assaults as a group. Defendants were not prosecuted for their political viewpoints or any protected First Amendment activity, but for their brazen and coordinated campaign to incite and engage in violence. So the prosecutor also said that the left-wing counter-protesters were arrested at rallies, but unlike Rundo and his group, there was no evidence that they were participating in a, quote, coordinated group effort to amplify their violent impact, let alone that they trained together to engage in combat fighting, use social media to recruit soldiers, or travel to multiple protests to assault people. Now, luckily, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals reviewed the matter immediately. They halted the release of Rundo, although they issued a temporary stay regarding his release. So now the prosecutor has to file an appeal about the dismissal of the charges because this judge, this jackass judge, dismissed the charges and wanted to release him immediately. So they have to fight that while he's being held temporarily. And let's be clear who this guy is. Rundo previously served 20 months in a New York State prison because he stabbed a rival gang member. And then he fled the country multiple times. He has traveled to about a dozen different countries to escape accountability. Also, they said he traveled to various countries to meet with other white supremacist groups. And according to news reports, he even celebrated Hitler's birthday when he was in Europe. So this guy is a major flight risk. He has seriously violent tendencies, but this judge wants to let him out. And, as for the judge, I'll let you decide why he's so hell-bent on letting this criminal roam free. I guess blue lives don't really matter to the right, as they claim, since, they're perfectly okay with Rundo beating up a police officer. Yeah, just let him go, right? I guess it's only when migrants do it in New York, then they want that person prosecuted. But, if it's a white supremacist, well, sure, he had a reason. Protected speech, First Amendment. Yeah. All right. I will let you all know when I hear more. Thank you so much for watching and listening. Please like this video, share it, become a subscriber, become a donor if you possibly can. Love you all. Take care. Talk with you soon.